Good morning. Today on Spotlight, inside the Michigan legislature, Governor Whitmer has presented her budget and her State of the State address. Her wish list is well known, but the power of the state purse resides with the Michigan Senate and the Michigan House. What are their priorities for this legislative session? We'll ask State Representative Mark Tisdale, a Republican, and State Senator Jeremy Moss, a Democrat. It's Sunday, March the 8th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. We're glad to have you. All right, the governor has presented her budget. The governor has presented her State of the State address, so there's no doubt what her wish list is. But you all control the purse. So let's take you one at a time. On the Senate side, Democrats control the Senate. What will the priorities be for this legislative session?
I think everything has to come under the umbrella of lowering costs for Michiganders across the board. And the governor outlined her vision, which aligns with some of our priorities in our Senate Democratic caucus, including making housing more affordable, which would be building more housing at attainable price points, lowering the costs of health care and medical debt, and ensuring that our kids' education is solid, has a great foundation for educational outcomes to train the next generation of our workforce. So we are going to be laser focused on those items. This moment demands it. People are getting squeezed. A lot of that squeeze is happening at the federal level, including cuts to health care, including this tariff policy, which bounces back and forth, and we're feeling it as we go to the grocery store or shop at other small businesses. And so in Michigan, we got to fill that gap at the state level and make sure that things are affordable here in the state of Michigan.
All right, very good. Representative Tisdale, same question to you. What will be the priorities on the House side, and Republicans control the House?
Well, of course, the Speaker has already spoken about the Speaker has spoken. There you go.
There you go. He should say that too.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to write that down.
Speaker Matt Hall.
Yeah, has already talked about property tax relief, which is a very popular topic, and you'll hear a lot about affordability, and the real problem is unaffordability, and just the prices have run ahead. And one of the biggest taxes, as economist Milton Friedman would always talk about, the biggest tax is spending. And the first budget that the governor signed was $58 billion. The executive recommendation this year is for $88 billion. Well, that's a 52% growth over her time in office, double the rate of inflation. So, and what you're talking about, the House side presenting, between what we're presenting or talking about and what the governor said, you're looking at a $14 billion difference. So there's a lot of room between those two to make it happen. But housing is certainly one of those things. In her 2025 address, the governor talked about spending $2 billion to buy, build, or fix 11,000 homes. Now, that's about $182,000 each. And Representative Steckloff and I just filed bipartisan legislation we're counting on doing 10,000 homes for $160 million. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this, and somewhere in between, we'll come to an agreement, just like we did the last time around. And in the House, the budget bills last time, each of them got about 100 votes. Mm-hmm. So we'll find our way and get there.
We could have passed it earlier, and I hope that we can get this budget done on time. Our communities deserve that.
Well, in passing it earlier, if I may, we did an awful lot of work on the budget last time. And one of our concerns is that there are billions of dollars that are being held in work projects that can be held for 4 years or more. And in 2023 and 2024, those 2 years combined, interest on work project dollars held totaled $1.1 billion. Well, you have to have a lot of money in the bank to draw $1.1 billion in interest payments. And so what is that money doing? How can we get that money either back to the taxpayers or out being spent on the projects that it was originally allocated for?
All right, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back. I'm going to let you react to that a little bit. I also want to talk about some bipartisan legislation that both of you have worked on with various degrees of success, and what you see coming down the line in this legislative session that you think the D's and the R's will come together on. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Your reaction to some of the things that you just heard Representative Tisdale saying. I think if I could sort of summarize, he's saying, regardless of how big the governor's wish list is, it's $88 billion, and that money has to come from somewhere. The speaker has said that he wants to see the biggest tax cut that he's had, 6% tax on luxury services, which he thinks is going to take care of all the property tax.
Yeah, well, look what we've done with that budget over the last several years. We've invested into our communities. We've made investments in communities that have been ignored by a Republican majority for a very long time. I represent Pontiac, our county seat here, which has been neglected at the state level, previously at the county level, and even at the local level. And now we have state, county, and local partners coming together to make a historic investment to reinvigorate downtown Pontiac. That's a significant thing in our budget. That is a good thing. We've also invested in things like fire trucks and infrastructure. We've supported kids with cancer. We've supported our Holocaust Center in this rise of anti-Semitism. I put out all those things on purpose because Matt Hall, the Speaker of the House, has identified each of those things as waste, fraud, and abuse, from fire trucks to the Holocaust Center, and has unilaterally stripped lawfully passed funding to those incredible investments in our community just because he could and kind of wants to imitate what's going on at the federal level.
Do both of you anticipate that you would be able to pass this budget, whatever the numbers turn out to be, by June 30th?
Well, I would hope so.
Because that's what school administrators want you to do.
It's also the law.
Certainly,
right,
yeah.
It is too, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And I would say that a lot of the work from last budget process will carry over into this. We had 18 appropriation subcommittee chairs that really started working February of last year to come up with last year's budget. And the House did take unilateral action. At the end of the fiscal year, the State Budget Office has 45 days to identify those spending programs that have expired. And we did, and by law, we were allowed to unilaterally act, and our Appropriations Committee did, and we cut $645 million out of that. But the State Budget Office sent over $2.7 billion. So it was about a 24% reduction in what the State Budget Office sent over, and well within the law as written.
And you got a lot of attention this past year. Governor signed into law your cell phones legislation bill. What should administrators, parents, students, and others, what should they be doing now for something that's going to take effect next school year?
Well, there are any number of comprehensive toolkits out there talking about everything from design to communications to the parents to implementation and enforcement, which is key. And there are probably 36 or so school districts in the state that have already implemented and have strictly enforced smartphone prohibitions during instruction time, and some of them bell-to-bell prohibitions. When the morning bell rings, you put it away. When the afternoon bell rings, you bring it back out. And so there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of experience out there. We're the 39th state now to have statewide standards. There's a lot of expertise and experience out there that you can draw upon. But in that whole process, you know, my first draft was in June of 2023. And I talked to an awful lot of people on both sides of the aisle, administrators, teachers, parents. You don't get 99-9 in the House and 34-1 in the Senate doing it by yourself. It really was a bipartisan effort. Senator Pohanke was very valuable in getting this done. And of course, when the governor said in her 2005 State of the State that she wanted to see a bipartisan bill passed regulating smartphones in schools, you know, that breathed a whole new level of life into it.
All right, take a quick little break. We'll come back. I want to talk about freedom of information. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Senator Moss, you have been champion of Freedom of Information Act and wanting to get more transparency. We're one of only 2 states that don't have it throughout the United States. You got it passed in the Senate, but it's held up in the House, and the Speaker Hall, when you originally put it over there, he said dead on arrival.
Which is shameful, truly shameful. This is something that we know if it went on the board in the House, it would pass with those overwhelming numbers that Mark talks about.
And we should say that you have bipartisan support. Senator McBroom from Upper Peninsula has been a champion with you on this as well, but the state still doesn't have it.
Absolutely. So you can get information out of your local government. You can find out what's going on in City Hall or the school district or the county. Michigan blocks you as a journalist, but also residents across the state from accessing emails and memos and schedules from the state legislature and the governor's office. And as you've mentioned, we're one of only 2 states that blocks our residents from that information. So we wonder why all these scandals come out of state government. They happen in the dark because they're allowed to happen in the dark. So 10 years ago, when I was in the House, I worked with a colleague, Ed McBroom, on the other side of the aisle to lift us up from this bottom ranking in ethics to give people more information. It is passed out of the legislature, out of one chamber, but never in the other. So now we've started this project in the Senate. It's actually Senate Bills 1 and 2. Our Democratic majority locked hands with our Republican colleagues to put this as a priority. We voted it out over a year ago, and it sits in the House, dead on arrival. And when Matt Hall, the Speaker of the House, was in the minority, and he was the minority leader, he voted for this. He supported this. So it just leaves questions as to why, now that he's Speaker of the House, what emails does he not want you to see? What memos does he not want public? And so, you know, it breeds more questions than answers, that now all of a sudden that he's in charge, why doesn't he want this ethics reform passed?
Representative Tisdale, you're part of that caucus. What has he said to you, if you've talked about it, and what would be your position on this?
Well, this is a subject that actually Senator Moss and I have communicated on, you know, just between the 2 of us, and both having that local government background. We've lived with FOIA obligations, and we've lived with Open Meetings Acts. The laws are already written. Just apply them to the legislature and to the governor. But, you know, and we were communicating when Senator Moss's side of the aisle controlled, you know, the House, the Senate, and the governor's seat. And it just seems like, I know it goes back to Mike Weber, who was in the House in my seat before me. He sponsored bills and voted several times for FOIA enactment. It just seems like one side or the other is pushing it, and it always seems to stall out. Personally, like I said, the laws are already written. Take the laws that apply to local governments and simply apply them to the legislature and the governor.
If the Speaker would let it come up for a vote, you'd be in favor of it?
Yes, I've sponsored multiple transparency bills in my time in my 6th year in the legislature, and it's just there's a hang up one side or the other. Just in the times I've been here and going back to my predecessor's time.
The 2 of you have been successful in getting elected on the very local level, you in Southfield, you in Rochester Hills, now also on the state level. This call for potentially federalizing elections in an important election year, a midterm election year. Should we or shouldn't we?
Yeah, I chair the Elections Committee, and we've gone from a challenging election situation to some of the strongest election systems here in the state of Michigan. We have debunked the conspiracy theories that Donald Trump has brought to Michigan. We have uplifted clerks and data and facts on the ground. We have listened to our election administrators to strengthen the certification process, to strengthen the canvassing process. We've reduced barriers to voting. You can now enjoy 9 days days of early in-person voting here in the state of Michigan. So we're trying to get away from the lies and conspiracies that Donald Trump drove in 2020 to actually be proud of our election system here in Michigan. So no, we do not need to federalize elections here in the state of Michigan. And you could ask any one of our 1,500 local clerks, Republicans and Democrats alike, who are proud of what they've done to uphold our democracy. So we do not need federal intervention just to appease the ego of somebody who has been meddling in our elections all along.
Representative Tisdale, do you have any concerns about the integrity of Michigan elections?
Well, Michigan, as Senator Moss pointed out, we have somewhere between 1,400 and 1,500 different election officials. We use equipment from 3 different manufacturers, and we have 3 standing post-election audits in Michigan, which is relatively unique. So I'm comfortable that the pieces are there. What federalizing the elections means, I don't know. The Constitution is pretty clear that the states schedule and run their elections. I can tell you that in my first term, I mean, we looked at like the qualified voter file, for example. There were estimates that there are 400,000 names on the QVF that hadn't voted in 20 years. There was an interest in just seeing, are these people still in the state? Are they still alive? Let's clear out those names. You know, if they're gone. There were, I can't remember, 100,000 that had a holding place in the date of birth. Just take a look at and see. Reach out to those people. What is your date of birth? And so there are some simple risk management tools and concerns and strategies that we could put in place. But as far as federalizing, I don't know what that means, and I don't know how that would square with the Constitution.
All right, we need to take one quick final break. We'll come right back for a quick final segment right after this. Representative Tisdale, Governor spoke an awful lot about literacy. He's probably talked longer on that than anything else in her State of the State. But there's a big price tag to all of this. Can we afford, even if it's a lofty goal?
Well, and I appreciate the governor's concern and interest. You know, in 2015, the state entered into a top 10 in 10 program under Governor Snyder. Mm-hmm. And during that 10-year period, we were supposed to be in the top 10 states by the year 2025. We're in the bottom 10 states. During that 10-year period, after inflation, spending went up 10%, enrollment went down 8%, mm-hmm. and we're in the bottom 10 states. It needs to be a focus on basics, simple basics. If your students can't read, you can throw everything else to the wind. And there was just an article in the Wall Street Journal this morning. There's some estimating that 80% of education is reading. And I think we're now 44th or 45th in 4th and 8th grade reading. So there's a lot of work to be done. There's been a lot of talk and spending already. And if it's a focus on the basics and getting back to the science of reading, which is essentially phonics, then I'd like to see how that looks and would be enthusiastic about supporting it.
Senator Moss, can we afford not to spend the amount of money that the governor said, given Michigan's position where we rank in terms of education, which is not good?
Well, we have to make these investments, and we've shifted the tide. For too many years, business leaders were setting education policy. It was this Betsy DeVos-backed model of disinvesting in our public schools and investing in for-profit education. We've shifted the tide. We've uplifted educators and parents. For the first time in our Democratic majority, teachers chaired the Education Committee in the legislature. So that's where we need to go, making these smart investments. We have put more slots in pre-K, the Great Start Readiness Program. We need to invest in literacy coaches. And so, yeah, I think that we absolutely have to head in that direction. But in order to see where we are are now, we have to look at where we've been. And we have shifted the tide away from this business model approach to education, to listening to educators in the classroom.
1 minute left. Both of your perspectives. Are data centers the future of this state and something that we should be investing in?
Data centers are the future of the country, and they are the future. There are all sorts of ways that we can introduce data centers into the state of Michigan. We have a lot of empty manufacturing sites. We have a lot of empty buildings in our now kind of hollowed out urban centers that I would look to filling first. I would propose allowing data centers to generate their own electricity and take that off the burden of the ratepayers and the electricity providers. But this is a transformative technology. If we aren't a significant portion of it, it's one of the places where our abundance of water, our abundance of engineers, and our cool temperatures all come together to play to our advantage. We're well positioned to lead on it.
Senator Moss?
But we need to safeguard our water, and we need to make sure that these costs aren't borne out onto ratepayers. And so, yeah, we need to strengthen the guardrails around data centers as they pop up in Michigan. The reality is, though, as long as people are using ChatGPT or posting a cartoon version of themselves on Facebook, we need to figure out where does this fit in our economy, and also what are the guardrails to protect ratepayers and our environment.
And it's the future of manufacturing. We've had success, great success. Rochester Hills makes more industrial robots than anybody in the country. It's adding the brain to the robots is where AI and the data centers come in.
Final yes or no. Should the voters of Michigan vote to convene a constitutional convention?
No, it would create so much chaos. We have a constitution right now that's been driven by voters and amended by voters. We don't need to throw everything out.
Representative Tisdale?
Relative to a state constitutional convention, I don't know enough about it, quite frankly. The last time it was done was 1969.
Early 60s, yeah.
Something like that. And I don't know, are we due? That's a good question. We've got a lot of the safeguards in Michigan that we would love to see on the national side.
All right, Representative Tisdale, thanks so much for coming in, sharing your thoughts. Senator Moss, thanks so much for coming in. And we know that you're seeking a higher office. We haven't started those interviews yet, but
I'll be back.
We'll have to get you back when we start all of
Sounds
that.
good.
All right, and we want to thank you at home for joining us. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.